Tustin, The Heart Beats. The heart beats like tiny fists on the wall of a padded asylum in the otherwise silence of the night. The wind whips outside and you lie in bed untouched by it, kicking off the snake of a bedsheet that is no longer either warming or cool. You're nothing in this moment but a housewife who sees ghosts that aren't there, or a businessman who will call in sick to work tomorrow even though your body is well. You are as infinitesimal as the mysterious itch that comes to the small of your back as soon as the lights go out. Well, it's beginning to rain now, and there is some thunder in the distance. The clock becomes nothing, and you can no longer hear the tiny fists in your ears. Your eyes close and the world becomes just dark enough. Lightning illuminates the bottles of vitamins that line your nightstand, and suddenly the sheets return, warming now and just exactly cool enough. You sleep. I honestly don't know. I began writing poetry when I was about 14. It just happened. I knew nothing about poetry. I'd never read any at that point. I think I write poetry because it's the most honest way for me to express myself. I'm an introverted exhibitionist. I want to be alone, and I also want the world to understand or empathize with my feelings and my life story. And I want my expression to be the center of attention instead of myself, hoping the reader finds a commonality and perhaps feels understood themselves as a result. Poetry is different than prose, in my opinion, because a single poem is very narrow. It's just a glimpse into life. It's a moment, and it's often largely left to interpretation. It's like a doorway open just a sliver, and you peek through, hopefully seeing more than you could have imagined. I can let the reader know specifically what I want them to know, and let almost everything else be a matter of interpretation. Often I'm unaware of the subtext of what I wrote until after I've written it, and I say, oh, that's why I wrote this. I was actually writing about that. I'm inspired by many things when it comes to my writing, my own memories, the odd machinations of my thoughts, the stories of others. It could even be a story in the news. Reading poetry often prompts me to write something of my own. So there are many inspirations. It's something that I often go back to when I write. I guess it's the terror of being alone with your thoughts and the repercussion of your decisions that you've made in your life that reverberate in your head when you're trying to sleep. It's something I go back to a lot, the abject horror of being alone inside your own head. I would think that that's probably the best way to say what that poem's about in one sentence. The same as, I wrote this poem, it's the same process as most of the poems I've written lately. It's changed over the years. I used to scoff at people that would set aside a specific and consistent time to write, and now I do precisely that. I've always had a ritual when I write, and my ritual the last 2 years has been the most fruitful. I write constantly now for the first time since I was a teenager. I take at least 1 hour and up to 4 attempting to write almost every night around the same time, if I can, and I treat it like it's a job. Sometimes I don't even want to do it, but I try to make myself do it for at least an hour. I listen to music, and I read poetry, and I'll take time away between the reading or the writing, and I'll play a game of solitaire, or I'll look up something on the internet, so I'm not just sitting there straight for several hours really making it seem like a job. And that's been working very well for me. And I don't remember exactly what I was doing or thinking when I wrote this poem, but that's most likely a version of what was happening just before I wrote it. Number 1 would be to write it all down. Just start it, just do it. Any thought you have, put it down. Any idea you have, just put it down, write it down. Even if you don't have time to do anything with it at that moment, just write it down. Everyone has a different process, but I think that putting everything down that you can as quickly as you can is helpful. Also, as I said before, setting a specific time to write has helped me tremendously, to my surprise. Also, judiciously edit. Don't bore us, get to the chorus, if you want to use musical parlance. I almost never write a poem longer than a page anymore. Whereas I think I used to go on and on. It was almost like a contest. How long can I make this poem? And I think that's counterproductive. It's okay to write an epic poem once in a while, but there's a reason why the radio single used to almost always be a 3-minute song. That's how long you can usually hold somebody's attention. And the longer you write, usually, to me, I think the less interesting you become. Just get to the point as soon as you can. Brevity is vastly underrated. My goal in writing has simplified to trying to say one specific thing exactly as I want to say it, and that's been very freeing. I write fairly quickly and don't do a lot of rewriting because I feel it takes away from the spontaneity and breathlessness of a poem. I rewrite mainly to improve clarity. And then I wait a month or so after I've written a poem, and then I do a last proofread with fresh eyes. Rarely do I change the poem beyond correcting mistakes or adding, deleting, rewriting a line or two. I try not to do vast rewrites. I don't think it makes sense. I think what you originally wanted to put down is what you put down. Rewriting's fine, but a lot of poetry that I've seen seems to be rewritten and rewritten in order to be perfect. And I think a rough stone with edges and crags and hidden dangers is a lot more interesting and unique and exciting than a smooth, shiny one. I've said that I've seen so many poems that have been written and have been rewritten and shined down to superfluousness. There seems to be nothing inside the poem anymore once it's been rewritten and rewritten. I like when poetry is ugly or it's beautiful or a combination, but I don't care for pretty. Flexing your perspicacity, to me, usually just makes poetry clunky, and it diverts from what you're trying to convey, unless you're trying to convey your perceived superiority to the reader. And then lastly, widen your experiences, whatever they might be. Read a lot more than you write, and not necessarily just poetry. Anything can be an inspiration, bad experiences, good experiences. The same advice for living a contented life. Be open-minded. I don't like most poetry, honestly, but I'll always attempt reading someone I haven't read before. I try to remove my supposition of their poetry from my head before I read them. Most of us, myself included, make judgments about anything based on someone's face, their speech, their mannerisms, race or gender, their station in life, education, what you assume to be their life experiences. Remove all of that from your thoughts when you begin to read, like cleansing your palate between courses of a meal, just so you can get the proper flavor of what the poem is and what it is to you, because the writer might not have even intended the way that you receive something that they've written, but that doesn't mean that it's improper that you received it that way. That's what art is. It's open to interpretation. I want to read not only from my perspective, but also the perspective of the antagonist. I don't think I've once had someone tell me that they like something I wrote because of my word choices or use of a literary device. It's almost exclusively been people saying they felt something when they read it. So that's how I try to go into reading it. I want to feel something. I want to learn something. The director, Billy Wilder, said that if someone compliments a director on the directing style, it's not a compliment because the viewer shouldn't notice the directing. Being a writer is like being a magician. The reader shouldn't notice they're being manipulated by your words because that's what you're doing. You're manipulating their feelings with what they've written. Their response to me should be a shock to them. So I think that that's how you should go into reading something. Go in hoping to be awed, hoping to unadvised, hoping for the unexpected, and having no preconceived notions. A Change of Habit by Charles Bukowski. He writes the story in such a dispassionate way, like a newspaper reporter on the surface. He's just reporting the story to you without superlatives, without emotion. It's about a man who shacks up with a woman, and one day he gets home and she's just gone. He didn't seem to be prepared for that. And then the poem goes on a little bit about his life for a short time after she left. And he allows the reader to infer their own emotions onto Manuel as they read the poem, just by recounting what he does and remembering the seemingly innocuous, unspectacular life that Manuel lived with Shirley for a short time. And the last lines, which to me I found often with Bukowski, the last lines are at once very soft and very sweet, and also like a rifle shot right between the eyes. I love poems that knock you out with the last lines, and they leave you slack-jawed or gasping in awe of how hard they struck you. And the way that he wrote it, he really just like punches you right in the face at the end. And to me, that's just really exemplifies what good poetry is about, that awe after you've read it.